The notification came at 4:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. My wife's phone buzzed on the nightstand, and the screen lit up just long enough for me to read the preview. Transfer confirmed. $15,000 received. You know what happens if you stop. My wife was sleeping 3 inches from me, breathing soft and steady, the way she always did after taking her melatonin. I memorized the number. Boston, area code. Then I rolled over and stared at the ceiling until dawn. My name is Nathan. I'm a trauma surgeon at Massachusetts General. Been there 11 years. My wife Vanessa ran the hospital's charity foundation, the one that raised about $2 million a year for pediatric care. We'd been married 10 years. 2 kids, a house in Brookline, a golden retriever named Captain. From the outside, we were the couple everyone envied. From the inside, starting that Tuesday morning, I realized I didn't know my wife at all. I didn't confront her. That's not how I operate. In the OR, you don't panic when the bleeding starts. You locate the source, you clamp it, and you fix it methodically. So that's what I did. First, I pulled our bank statements. 6 months worth. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable once you knew where to look. Small transfers to something called GH Consulting. $2,000 here, $3,000 there, always on Wednesdays. Then a jump. $8,000 in March. $0 in April. Last week's $15,000 made the total somewhere around $78,000. From our joint savings, the account we'd built for the kids' college fund, Vanessa handled our finances. She always had. I was the surgeon who worked 60-hour weeks and trusted his wife to keep the lights on. When I'd noticed the savings dipping last month, she'd smiled and said the market correction hit our index funds. I'd nodded and gone back to reading about the new laparoscopic technique. I felt sick. Not angry yet, just the cold clinical recognition that something was deeply wrong. Wednesday morning, I told the hospital I was taking a personal day. First time in 3 years. I drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks from our house and waited. At 9:15, Vanessa pulled out of the driveway in her silver Audi. I followed at a comfortable distance. She drove to the hospital first, parked in her usual spot, went inside for 20 minutes. Normal. Then she came out, got back in her car, and drove to the Ritz-Carlton in Back Bay. She valeted the car. I parked across the street and watched through the lobby windows. Vanessa walked straight to the elevator bank like she'd done it 100 times. No hesitation, no looking around. Muscle memory. I waited 45 minutes. Then I walked in, showed my hospital ID to the front desk clerk, and gave her my best concerned doctor face. I'm Dr. Cole. My colleague left her insulin kit in my car. She's a guest here, Vanessa Cole. Can you ring her room so I can bring it up? The clerk typed something. I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a guest under that name. Try GH Consulting. She sometimes books under her company. More typing. Ah, yes. Suite 714. Let me ring. No need. I'll just leave it at the desk. She'll come down. I walked out knowing 2 things. Suite 714 at the Ritz ran about $800 a night, and my wife had a regular booking under a company name that had been draining our savings for 6 months. I needed more information before I made my next move. That evening, I came home to find Vanessa in the kitchen making her famous chicken marsala. The kids were doing homework at the dining table. Captain was begging under the table. Everything looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. How was your day? She asked, kissing my cheek. Lost a patient on the table. Ruptured aortic aneurysm. Nothing we could do. That part was true. It had happened last week. But I watched her face for any crack, any tell. Oh, baby. I'm sorry. She touched my arm with practiced sympathy. Want me to open that Barolo we've been saving? Sure. We drank expensive wine and talked about the kids' school play and the new neighbor's ugly fence. At one point, Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then flipped it face down so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. Who's that? I asked, casual. Just the foundation office. Donor follow-up stuff. Never ends. I smiled and refilled her glass. Must be exhausting, managing all that money. Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. It's a lot of responsibility, but I love it. I know you do. That night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone. She used the same passcode for everything our daughter's birthday. Lazy security. The text thread that had buzzed during dinner was from a contact saved as Office VM. The messages told a different story. Suites booked for Thursday. Same time. That was Vanessa. Looking forward to it. Wear the red one. Office VM. I scrolled up. Months of messages. Intimate, explicit, familiar. Not the language of a new affair. This had history. This had comfort. The contact photo was turned off. But one message from 3 months back gave me what I needed. Just told Richard we should move up the timeline. The audit's in September. We need everything transferred before then. Richard. The only Richard connected to both Vanessa and the hospital foundation was Richard Ashworth, Chief Financial Officer of Massachusetts General. Married, 2 kids, corner office, the guy who wore Tom Ford suits and always ordered the most expensive bottle at hospital galas. I'd shaken his hand at every fundraiser for a decade. My blood went cold, not because of the affair. Affairs I could process. What froze me was the word audit. They weren't just sleeping together. They were stealing from the foundation, the pediatric charity, money that was supposed to help sick children. And the way those texts read, they were planning to have everything moved before anyone noticed. $78,000 from our savings was just a piece of it. I needed to see the foundation's books. Thursday, I went to work like normal, operated on a gallbladder at 7, a hernia repair at 10, consulted on 2 cases in the afternoon. At lunch, I walked down to the administrative wing and found my friend Ellen Chen. She was the hospital's internal auditor, a woman with a photographic memory and zero tolerance for financial irregularities. Nathan, you never come down here. What's wrong? Hypothetical question. If someone suspected irregularities in the foundation accounts, how would they check? Ellen put down her sandwich. What kind of irregularities? The kind involving 6 figures and a shell company. She stared at me for a long moment. Does this hypothetical involve anyone I know? It might involve someone we both know. Ellen closed her office door. I've been asking Richard for the foundation's Q2 reconciliation for 3 weeks. He keeps saying it's not ready. That's never happened before. My heart hammered. Can you pull the raw data without going through him? I have audit access to all financial systems. It's in my job description. She paused. Nathan, if this is what I think it is, we need to involve legal and the board. Not yet. I need to see the numbers first. If I'm wrong, I don't want to destroy careers over a suspicion. And if you're right, then we do this by the book. Every step documented. Ellen spent the afternoon pulling records. By 5 p.m., she called me back to her office and closed the door again. Her face was gray. It's bad, Nathan. She showed me spreadsheets on her screen. Over the past 18 months, $340,000 had been diverted from the foundation through a web of fake vendor payments all routed through GH Consulting, which was registered to a P.O. box in New Hampshire. Every payment had been approved by Vanessa and countersigned by Richard. There's more. Ellen clicked to another tab. 3 major donors made restricted gifts for the new pediatric wing. That money is supposed to be untouchable. $210,000 of it has been moved to an operating account and then paid out to GH Consulting. They stole from the Children's Wing Fund. If these numbers are right, they've taken over $500,000. I sat down because my legs wouldn't hold me. $500,000. My wife and her lover had stolen $500,000 from sick children, and the $78,000 from our savings? That was probably their escape fund. Money they could access quickly if things went sideways. What do we do? I asked. Ellen was already reaching for her phone. I'm calling the board chair. And you need to call a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. A criminal defense lawyer. Because when this comes out, they're going to look at you too. She was right. I was the thief's husband. I worked at the same hospital. In any investigation, I'd be a suspect until proven otherwise. That night, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 45 minutes before driving home. When I walked in, Vanessa was helping our son with his science project, building a model of the solar system out of styrofoam balls. She looked up and smiled. There's dinner in the fridge. I watched her paint Jupiter's red spot with our 8-year-old, patient and loving, and I felt something break inside me that I knew would never fully heal. This woman who read bedtime stories and organized neighborhood block parties had systematically stolen money meant for dying children. And she'd done it while kissing me goodnight. Vanessa. I love the kids. I need you to remember that no matter what happens. She looked up, confused. Of course. What's going on? Nothing. Long day. I called a criminal defense attorney the next morning. Marcus Webb, Harvard Law, former federal prosecutor. He listened to everything without interrupting, then said 4 words that defined the next month of my life. Don't confront her yet. His reasoning was precise. If I tipped off Vanessa, she and Richard would destroy evidence, move money offshore, and possibly try to frame me as the fall guy, which, based on those texts about moving up the timeline, they might already be planning. Your wife has access to your finances, your house, your children. Right now, she thinks she's safe. That's your only advantage. Use it. So I became an actor in my own home. I smiled at breakfast. I asked about her day. I made love to her on Saturday night while knowing she'd been in suite 714 with Richard on Thursday. Every moment was a performance. Every "I love you" tasted like ash. Meanwhile, Ellen and Marcus built the case. Ellen documented every fraudulent transaction, cross-referenced bank records with vendor databases, and confirmed that GH Consulting had no employees, no office, and no legitimate business activity. The money trail led to an account in the Cayman Islands registered to, and this was the detail that nearly made me throw up, registered to a trust fund in my children's names. They'd hidden stolen money in my kids' names. If it all blew up, my children would be tied to the fraud. My children. Marcus explained the strategy. They set it up so if investigators find the money, it looks like you and Vanessa were squirreling it away for your family. Richard stays clean. Your wife takes the fall, and you go down with her. Richard was going to sacrifice Vanessa? The text suggests she doesn't know about the offshore account. She thinks the money is going into GH Consulting's domestic account, which Richard controls. He's been siphoning it further without telling her. So Richard was cheating on his wife with my wife, stealing from the hospital with my wife, and also stealing from my wife. The layers of betrayal were almost impressive in their complexity. 2 weeks later, we were ready. Ellen had compiled a 200-page forensic audit. Marcus had coordinated with the FBI's white-collar crime division. The board chair, a retired federal judge named Margaret Torres, had been briefed and was quietly horrified. The plan was surgical. Margaret would call an emergency board meeting on Friday afternoon under the pretense of reviewing the annual budget. Richard would be required to attend. Meanwhile, the FBI would execute search warrants at Richard's home, his office, and the P.O. box in New Hampshire. Simultaneously, a second team would secure the hospital's financial servers. Vanessa would be at the meeting too. She always attended board meetings as foundation director. Thursday night, the last night of pretending, was the hardest. Vanessa and I sat on the couch watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. Her feet were in my lap. I was rubbing her ankles the way she liked. Nathan? Yeah? Do you think we'll always be this happy? I looked at her, really looked, and for one moment I saw the woman I'd married. The resident who'd spilled coffee on me in the cafeteria 12 years ago and apologized so profusely that I'd asked her to dinner just to make her stop. The woman who'd held my hand when my father died, who'd screamed my name when our daughter was born. I think happiness is a choice, I said. Every single day. She smiled and squeezed my hand. I choose you. I didn't sleep that night. Friday at 2 p.m., the board convened in the hospital's executive conference room. Margaret sat at the head of the table. Ellen sat beside her with 2 boxes of documentation. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Marcus had arranged for me to be in an adjacent room with a video feed. Richard walked in at 2:07, Tom Ford suit, confident stride, a man who believed he was untouchable. Vanessa followed at 2:10, carrying her foundation binder, looking polished and professional. Margaret opened with budget items, normal, routine, boring. At 2:30, she said, "Before we adjourn, we have one additional matter. Ellen, would you present your findings?" Richard's smile didn't waver. He was good. I'll give him that. Ellen stood and distributed folders. Over the past 18 months, approximately $547,000 has been diverted from the foundation through fraudulent vendor payments to a shell company called GH Consulting. She clicked to a slide showing the payment trail. Every transaction was initiated by Foundation Director Vanessa Cole and authorized by CFO Richard Ashworth. The room went silent. I watched Vanessa's face on the monitor. Color drained from her cheeks in real time, like watching a time-lapse of a flower dying. Richard leaned forward. "This is absurd. GH Consulting is a legitimate media vendor. Vanessa, tell them." But Vanessa wasn't looking at Richard. She was staring at the documents in front of her, flipping pages with increasingly frantic hands. "These are bank records," she whispered. "How did you get our bank records?" "Our?" Margaret repeated. "You're confirming a financial relationship with GH Consulting?" Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. Richard stood up. "I need to call my attorney. This meeting is... Mr. Ashworth, please sit down." Margaret's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years on the federal bench. "2 FBI agents are waiting outside this room. If you leave, you'll be meeting them sooner rather than later." Richard sat. Vanessa finally looked up, and the transformation was something I'll never forget. The polished foundation director dissolved, and underneath was raw panic. "Nathan," she said suddenly, turning toward the door like she could sense me. "Where's Nathan? I need to talk to my husband." Dr. Cole has been cooperating with the investigation, Margaret said. That word cooperating hit Vanessa like a physical blow. She understood instantly. Her husband knew. Her husband had known. And her husband had helped build the case against her. No. Her voice broke. Nathan, no. You don't understand. Richard made me do this. He said the foundation was running a deficit, and we needed to reallocate temporarily. He said it would all go back. Richard erupted. That is a complete lie. She approached me. She designed the entire scheme. I have emails proving. You have nothing, Vanessa screamed, standing so fast her chair toppled. You told me we were saving the foundation. You told me the donors would never know. You told me you loved me, and we'd start fresh in. She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted in front of 12 board members. Margaret nodded to Ellen, who opened the conference room door. 2 agents in dark suits entered. One approached Richard, one approached Vanessa. Vanessa Cole, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud a charitable organization. I watched my wife being handcuffed on a monitor in a room 30 feet away. She was sobbing, repeating my name, pleading for someone to call me. The woman who'd chosen me on Thursday night was being led away in flex cuffs on Friday afternoon. Richard went next. His arrest was quieter. He'd already shut down, retreated into whatever mental fortress people build when their life collapses. He asked for his lawyer exactly once and didn't speak again. I stayed in that adjacent room for a long time after everyone left. Marcus came in eventually. The FBI found $412,000 in the Cayman account. They're freezing it. And the money in my kids' trust? Being returned to the foundation. Your children's names will be cleared. Ellen made sure of that. What about Vanessa? She's being processed. Her attorney will push for bail, but with flight risk and the amount involved, the judge might not grant it. I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the conference table. It made a small, final sound. Marcus, did I do the right thing? He sat down across from me. You discovered that someone was stealing from a children's charity. You reported it through proper channels. You protected your kids from being dragged into a fraud scheme. Yeah, Nathan, you did the right thing. It didn't feel right. It felt like I detonated a bomb inside my own house and was standing in the rubble wondering where to sleep. 6 months later, I sat in federal court watching Judge Raymond Park deliver sentences. Vanessa, in an orange jumpsuit, her hair longer and darker without salon highlights, looked smaller than I remembered. The confident woman who'd managed million-dollar galas was gone. In her place was someone who'd spent 6 months understanding what she'd lost. Richard got 12 years. He'd been the financial architect. The Cayman account was his idea. The fake vendor was his creation. Under questioning, it became clear he'd been running similar schemes at his previous hospital before joining Mass General. Vanessa wasn't his first partner in fraud. She was his third. Vanessa got 8 years. Her attorney argued she'd been manipulated by Richard, which was partially true. But the judge noted she'd actively participated for 18 months, personally approved every fraudulent payment, and this was the part that sealed her fate. Had continued the scheme, even after learning the money was being diverted from the pediatric wing fund. She'd known sick children were being shortchanged, and she'd kept signing. Before sentencing, Vanessa was allowed to make a statement. She turned and looked directly at me in the gallery. I want my husband to know that I never planned for this to happen. Richard made me feel important at a time when I felt invisible. Nathan was always at the hospital, always saving someone else's life, and I was just the woman who organized parties and managed spreadsheets. Richard saw me. He listened, and by the time I realized what we were doing was wrong, I was in too deep to stop. She paused, tears running. I'm sorry about the children's fund. I'm sorry about our children. I'm sorry I couldn't be the person you deserved. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, because there was nothing I could say that would undo any of it. After the trial, the hospital offered me a settlement. They were terrified I'd sue for damages, my reputation, my kids' involvement, the savings my wife had drained. Margaret Torres personally called to negotiate. I accepted enough to replenish the kids' college fund and cover legal fees. The rest I donated back to the foundation. Ellen was promoted to CFO. She implemented financial controls so tight that, as she put it, you couldn't buy a paperclip without 3 signatures. The foundation recovered. The pediatric wing opened on schedule, funded by a wave of sympathy donations after the scandal made the news. I kept the house. I kept the kids. I kept the dog. Captain, who understood nothing about fraud or betrayal, greeted me every evening with the same uncomplicated joy, and some nights that was the only thing holding me together. My daughter asked once why Mommy had to go away. I told her that Mommy made a mistake and had to face the consequences, the way we all do when we break the rules. My son, older and sharper, asked if Mommy stole money. I said yes. He asked if I was the one who told on her. I said yes to that too. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Good, stealing is wrong." 8-year-old clarity, better than anything my therapist told me. Vanessa wrote letters from federal prison in Danbury. 1 a month, regular as clockwork. I read the first 3. They were full of apologies and explanations and promises about the future. The 4th letter I left unopened. Then the 5th. Then I stopped checking the mailbox on the days they arrived. It wasn't that I hated her. Hatred would have been simpler. What I felt was the exhaustion of loving someone who'd turned out to be a stranger. Every memory I had was contaminated. Every smile, every touch, every quiet evening on the couch, I'd never know which moments were real and which were performances by a woman hiding $500,000 in stolen money. Last month, I accepted a position as chief of trauma surgery at Johns Hopkins. Fresh start, new city. The kids were nervous, but excited. My daughter wanted to know if Baltimore had good pizza. My son wanted to know if they had a dog park. On our last night in Brookline, I walked through every room the way you walk through a museum. Kitchen where Vanessa made her chicken marsala. Living room where we'd watched that deep-sea documentary. Bedroom where I'd read that text at 4:47 a.m., and my life had split into before and after. Captain followed me room to room, tail wagging, oblivious. I scratched behind his ears and told him we were going on an adventure. He seemed satisfied with that explanation. Dogs are better at moving forward than people. Driving south on I-95 with the kids asleep in the back seat and Captain snoring in the cargo area, I caught myself checking the rearview mirror. Old habit. Looking for something behind me that wasn't there anymore. The highway stretched ahead, and somewhere in the darkness, a new hospital waited with patients I hadn't met and problems I could actually fix. That was enough. That was more than enough. I turned up the radio. The kids shifted in their sleep. Captain's tail thumped once against the crate, and I drove toward morning.